You guys occupy a very interesting space at the moment, though, because we'll talk about the transition in a second, but you've made this move into, I guess, almost coming full circle, going back to some of your avant-garde black metal roots.
Yeah.
Is it like, how accepting do you find audiences of you guys now?
I don't know if accepting is a weird word, but I think that we're sort of managing to sort of tap into something that our existing fans are appreciative of, and then new audiences will sort of understand what we're doing now at this point, maybe better than before. And it's a thing that it's always been part of the music. There's always been this black metal undercurrent, and being who I am, coming from where I came from, I think people have always heard that, and that's why we've always had this. Even when playing folk music, we've had like a primarily metal audience. So it's kind of, in a way, it's sort of bringing them back in. It's like a kind of hug to the existing fans and also to myself and my past. But that's an age thing. You get to a certain point, I think, when you stopped experimenting and trying to discover who you are, and you understand more who you are, hopefully, and sort of got a good picture of where I come from musically and how to tie all those things together.
Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 285 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, you will find me in the lobby of the Hotel Terminus in Bergen, Norway, for a conversation with Matt McNerney from Hexvessel. Hexvessel's new album, Nocturne, was put out in June by Prophecy Productions. It is absolutely sensational. So too was Hexvessel's performance at this year's edition of Beyond the Gates. All of those topics were under discussion when I sat down with Matt. We also spoke about his time in the band Code. We spoke about his move from the UK to Finland, the journey that he's taken in terms of his career, in terms of his music. We also touched on the spiritual a little bit. I can't wait to share it with you. It's going to be coming your way very shortly, but first, as always on Into the Necrosphere, we celebrate the spirit of independence with a bit of unsanctioned filth. This comes to us courtesy of Izmir, a project headed up by Colby Hink of the band Wormwitch. He has recently put out his brand new demo, and from that demo, for your listening pleasure, this is a track called Tombs of Resolve. Tombs of Resolve from the demo of the same name. The band you just heard is Izmir, and that is headed up by Colin Hink of the band Wormwitch. Fantastic stuff, and if I were a betting man, I would suggest that that is probably the last time that you are going to hear this band in unsigned form. Absolutely sensational stuff. And of course, if you're in an unsigned band and you want me to hear your best work in the studio, then drop me a line on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. Hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, or on X, and if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. Just do me a favor and don't send me a Bandcamp link that you then expect me to pay for if I want to feature your music on the show. That shit's not happening. And of course, in keeping with the spirit of independence, next week I've got a very special premiere on the Sphere by a band who is unsigned but should be no strangers to anybody who listens to Into the Necrosphere. And of course, if you do listen to Into the Necrosphere, you should be aware, or at least familiar, with the Cosa Nostra of podcasting, the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, as we are called, filling your week from Monday to Sunday with the very finest in high quality content. We start off on a Monday with Brandon Legion and Horrorwolf 666. On a Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. I mentioned last week that I've got an absolutely savage lineup coming up over the course of the next couple of weeks, and next week I have got an episode that I am unbelievably excited about sharing, something unlike anything I've ever done on this show before, the rebirth of Svarthalv and Gehenna. This particular episode consists of 3 parts. So we recorded a conversation that Svarthalv and I had over lunch in Bergen on the day of the Gehenna reunion. I then recorded some backstage footage of him getting ready, and we had a bit of a conversation while he was doing his corpse paint. And then we had a conversation last week, so about 2 weeks after the fact, that is kind of an epilogue and him reflecting on what that experience meant to him, what it means for the band going forward, and actually turned out to be probably a lot more personal than I anticipated, but genuinely I think some of the best work that I've ever done. So I cannot wait for you guys to see it. That's coming up next week, but before you get to that, you're going to have plenty of other podcasting goodness to sink your little teeth into, including on a Wednesday, our first double shot. It starts with Everything Went Black, hosted by Mike Hill from the band Tombs. We also give you on a Wednesday Iblis Manifestations, and that's brought to you by my brother from another mother, the Middle Eastern marauder himself, Cheyenne from the band Trivax. On a Thursday, your second double shot, that starts with Necromaniacs. For that one, Sensei Mike Hill returns. He's joined by his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scandado, sometimes Outlaw Mike Scandado, and the Professor Jeff Kashid. They review new and old horror movies. They've just finished a 4-episode roundup of the 4 films in the Jaws franchise, and that is absolute podcasting gold. So if you haven't listened to it yet, make sure that straight after this episode, you go into the archives and you check out those last 4 episodes of Necromaniacs. It is well worth your time. Also, of course, on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, we got the Sinister Minister, the Reverend Karl Hikara, and he takes you on a curated tour through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric. And if you like the Reverend, the good news is he joins me for the Weekly News Rant. And this week we had plenty to discuss, including brand new music by Paradise Lost. You get to hear our thoughts on that new Gaerea single that some of you guys may have heard and may have some thoughts of your own on. There is an absolutely bruising swirly of the week coming the way of a group of people, and much, much more. That's coming up after the interview. But first, sit back and enjoy as I welcome to Into the Necrosphere for his first time, definitely not his last time, Matt McNerney from Hexvessel.
Well, it is very nice to see you again. And you were still living in the UK when I met you the first time. Okay. We were, as I was saying, it was.
That's a long time ago.
I'll dig up the interview and send it to you as well.
20 years ago.
More. It was 2000, because Nouveau Gloaming came out around 2003, 2004.
Yeah, I think we made it a lot earlier than that.
Yeah.
But it took a while for it to come out. I think we had to remix it, and it took a long time. You've
traveled a long and winding path.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again too. Let's kind of just start with last night. How did you feel about how last night went?
Really good, really good. I mean, we felt really good about it when we booked the show, and everything about it was good. And it was a good booking, and a right one for us, but also a sort of bucket list thing. So I came last year, and I really enjoyed the festival. We played here many years ago with Grave Pleasures, and it was good, but it was a different kind of festival. They didn't have Greek Holland, and it was like in the club downstairs and stuff at Garage. It's always been really good, and I love Bergen as well. But everything about it felt right about doing it now with this album and with where we're at with Hexvessel. It's a really good moment to play Beyond the Gates and to play to an audience who are very kind of like-minded audience that wouldn't maybe have discovered the band. So that was good.
You guys occupy a very interesting space at the moment, though, because we'll talk about the transition in a second, but you've made this move into, I guess, almost coming full circle, going back to some of your avant-garde black metal roots.
Yeah.
Is it like, how accepting do you find audiences of you guys now?
I don't know if accepting is a weird word, but I think that we're sort of managing to sort of tap into something that our existing fans are appreciative of, and then new audiences will sort of understand what we're doing now at this point, maybe better than before. And it's a thing that it's always been part of the music. There's always been this black metal undercurrent, and being who I am, coming from where I came from, I think people have always heard that, and that's why we've always had this. Even when playing folk music, we've had like a primarily metal audience. So it's kind of, in a way, it's sort of bringing them back in. It's like a kind of hug to the existing fans and also to myself and my past. But that's an age thing. You get to a certain point, I think, when you stopped experimenting and trying to discover who you are, and you understand more who you are, hopefully, and sort of got a good picture of where I come from musically and how to tie all those things together. So I think the new material is sort of like it's a full circle of who I am as a musician and a writer and things like that, and what I've been doing. And we have Yusuf from Dödheimsgard on the record as well, so that's also a kind of like tying into the past and bringing everything together. And I think that's something that's quite interesting to me at the moment, is how to explore my own history in music and sort of how to bring it together and show that there was always a vision about it. There was always a purpose about it. It's just that, when you're younger and you're sort of like stabbing at certain things and going in different directions, it looks very haphazard. But I think there was really, an agenda at the beginning, and it's nice to sort of feel that that's all come together in the package of what Hexvessel is doing now, I think.
And so I was curious about this. It was age that made you start to sort of reflect and bring back some of these black metal elements? Because you started on Polar Veil.
Yeah.
And then Nocturne, I think, has really taken that a big step forward. I mean, it's black metal in spirit, I feel. It's never like some people will describe it as black metal music. I would describe it as it's in the same space for me as Goldsfjord. Yeah. Where there's the essence and the spirit of it is there, but it is also its own entity and its own thing.
Yeah, and I think as a person, Karl, it really has an understanding of the atmosphere of black metal and what that means, and is a figure of the movement. So I can definitely feel a similarity there in approach. And for me, black metal was always a feeling more than a genre. So the genre that it's become, it's a bit like punk. Punk isn't what it was in the beginning. Punk was a movement, it was a feeling, it was a wave. And I think that's what it was in the beginning as well. And what I try to do now is to sort of emote what it is I felt when I felt that feeling that you can get from it, that I think is kind of missing from the genre that it's become. It's sort of like you get these Instagram kits of how to be a hiker, and you have all the certain things, you tick the boxes. It's like that with black metal now. It's sort of like people feel that it needs to have these certain elements to be black metal, whereas I don't think like that. I think, and especially back in those days, there was a lot of innovation and a lot of experimentation and sort of avant-garde artistic expression that I think I try to put back into it to kind of I think to express something that I feel is kind of sort of missing, that it hasn't been expressed. And I think also with the singing in over the music, it's not radical, because there's been bands with singing. You've had even Vedbu and Zender back in the mid-90s and stuff. But I think that it's still quite radical what we're doing with that. And it still causes waves. You still have people who are really, really into black metal who find that really difficult and hard to deal with. And so I think there's still a sort of aspect of it being quite radical, even if the genre has been going for as long as it's been going. So there's still room for an artistic expression there, but it's based on that feeling that it isn't for me, it isn't a genre, and it's more of an unexplainable feeling.
It's an expression.
It is, yeah.
You have always been, and I've followed you, as we said, since Nouveau Gloaming came out. You've been remarkably stubborn your whole career about doing exactly what you want to do, sticking to your vision. And music started for you, as I understand it, when you were 12 years old. I mean, you were in your first band when you were 12.
Yeah. We had a good. The school was like it was a Jesuit Catholic school, but the good side of it
for black metal guys.
it was perfect for being rebellious about music. But they were really the priests. The good thing about it is they let us have this youth club under the school where bands could play. So that's where I was introduced to a lot of new bands, and we could actually put on gigs and make music happen, which was really important. And the priests would come to the shows and stuff. And when I look back at it, they were actually really supportive. Even though I sort of had this other experience of it being really oppressive religiously, when it comes to art, it was really fundamental that we had that. And so I think that sort of ties into everything that I do even now. And I got an early experience of what it was like to organise shows, put a band together, get gear there, all of that kind of stuff that set me up. And so I've probably been a pain in the arse for a lot of the bands since then, just because I was really, trying kind of still to get it together from those old days, still with that mindset of DIY, like you've got to force your vision through. So probably learned a lot along the way of how to be more diplomatic and more, conductive of a group environment towards things. But then again, that sort of independence and that strong will of also the rebellion against the religion thing, I think has just carried me forward, has probably done a lot of good for my motivation,
How old were you when you put on your first show?
I think we were 13 by the time we got it together. So it was because it was the first year of that school, so it would have been 13, 14.
And that was with Vomitorium?
Vomitorium, yeah. My mother loves to tell her friends that
brutal
my
death
son's
metal
band is
what was the style that you were making with Vomitorium?
It was really brutal. It was really as aggressively anti-religious as we could come up with, but the riffs were terrible, and I wrote everything, and I think I sort of had a bit of trauma from that everybody got really good musically, and I stayed really at that level. So it took me a long time to just kind of to learn how to play music and write music, but I learned a lot, through the years of being in code and watching how Andy McIver would write stuff, and then I learned through Yusuf of writing stuff in Dudheim's Garden. So I think it took me a long time before I was able to kind of get on my feet with that again and go back to the beginning of actually carrying a band and writing songs and coming up with a concept and everything. So yeah, it's been a long journey. I kind of wished that I'd done it a bit earlier, but then these things just happen the way they happen,
Yeah, I mean, you also moved all over the place. So you lived in, grew up in Wimbledon. You've lived in Norway for a period of time.
Yeah.
You've lived in multiple parts of Finland. You now still reside in Finland. What was why did, I'm a transplant myself. So what was the catalyst for you to move? Was it just career, music?
No, I think the nature thing had been a kind of early catalyst of that, in that the Scout movement that I was part of was a really good way of getting away from kind of religion, society, and having an escape. So I sort of related that to freedom. But as well with music, I got into music through the Scouts and through camping. We'd go on these long camps away from our parents. It was really freeing. And so music and metal sort of tied into that feeling of freedom and also nature. So I started searching for I think the two things were intertwined. So going to Norway and looking for the black metal kind of feeling, the movement, the core of that was very much tied into the nature, exploring nature and hiking. I got really into hiking and doing crazy journeys on my own, interrailing and going to stations and hiking all night, that sort of thing on my own. And so those sort of things, they're really tied together, and I've been searching for that, for the right place, for the home of that feeling, where music and nature could come together. So it was only when we went to record in Finland that I started to really get this feeling that Finland might be that place for me, and it's really proved to be the case, But it was a search. I lived in the Netherlands for 3 years and never really found my home there. But I've tried sort of traveling around and living in different places to get that. I think it's important as an artist that your imaginary world, your artistic world, and your reality are like united in a good way, in a way that's very conducive to creating. And so that's sort of how I feel about it. I've found somewhere where I can be myself creatively, but I don't have to pretend. I don't have to sort of like, I think going from England to Norway, traveling and that sort of thing, I was just living 2 different lives. And so now it feels like the life is sort of complete in a way.
How often do you go back to England?
Twice a year. I should go more. My dad's quite old now, so it's nice to go back and see him. But yeah, it's not that far, but it's still quite an expense to go back. So yeah.
I was going to ask, do you still feel, because you moved probably around about the same age as I moved from South Africa to the UK, and I'm 45 now, so I've spent more than half my life in the UK.
Yeah.
Do you still feel a connection to the UK as kind of your home?
Yeah, I think, and especially as I get older, again, I have a family, I have kids of my own, and so sort of like giving them a full picture of who I am has also made me think about that, the connection with home. But definitely when thinking about a spiritual feeling, because I got into paganism in the UK, and so my view of paganism is definitely sort of a British outlook. And so we like to go back and visit sacred sites in the UK, and we have friends who are pagans there, and it's really nice to experience home, my old home, in a way that I couldn't when I lived there, because it was all wrapped up in growing up and the traumas of school and the traumas of society and where I lived and things like that. And no one could ever live where they grew up, because Wimbledon became like this really expensive area. It's one of the most expensive areas.
Ironically, I lived in Wimbledon for 8 years when I first moved to the UK. So I know the area.
Yeah, so there's a lot of South Africans living in Wimbledon. It's a strong community there. But
you used to be the guy standing by the train station, like saying, "I want to see your passport, please."
Yeah, but it's like that. So there was a case of, I don't know, we felt disenfranchised growing up. But also 90s was, I think it was a difficult period, and things got a little bit easier maybe. So it's nice to go home, and I definitely feel like an English musician and person more now. I'm very much more content with that than I have been in the past. Maybe sort of running away from it, trying to be someone else.
You know what it is. I spoke to Blasphemer about this a little while back as well. You have to disconnect to reconnect.
Absolutely.
I experienced that with South Africa as well. When I get back to South Africa now and I get off the plane in Cape Town, I take the first breath of South African air. I feel like I'm home. But when I was in my late teens, approaching 21, I hated the place. I was trying to get out as quickly as I possibly could.
Yeah, I think that's the same with religion in a way, is that, completely disconnecting and rebelling and, putting the middle finger up to Christianity and Catholicism. It's like now when I'm older, I can appreciate the aspects of that I couldn't when I was younger. And I think it's a really important thing to come to terms with those things, and not to allow them to become debilitating, but more like inform your work and your outlook to make your life kind of more enriched,
It's amazing how many guys in metal as well, and I'm talking like people you probably wouldn't even expect it from, the drummer from Antichrist Siege Machine, dudes like that. They grew up in extremely strict religious households.
Yeah.
I was exactly the same, and I think unless you've been in that situation, you can't quite relate to what people went through. When you say traumas, I understand exactly what you're talking about, because it's everything from the guilt associated with your own discovery. So, like an example for me, and again, maybe you can relate to this. I remember being 12 years old and hearing Painkiller and thinking, this is the fucking best thing I've ever heard in my entire life, but it must be the most evil song ever. You're almost like apologizing, and then you start negotiating with God, like, hey, listen, if you made Glenn and KK play the guitar this well, surely it can't be satanic.
Yeah, and it's a really important thing, because what it does is it mystifies your experience with this thing. In that I thought Morbid Angel must have had to sell their souls to be able to play that well, because it was so far removed from what we were able to do at that age, that you thought, how could anybody have this unnatural ability? Because you have this idea of people being very evil, and the symbols that they're using are, really evil, and so I think then that's great, because it does give you this idea that there's something more magical at work, and so that's stayed with me all the time. When I listen to albums that it's just like, this cannot be created by a human being. There must be something else going on, and I think that's a really important thing about how your experience with these things are enriched, getting to another level. Some people can just go and listen to a show and, oh, it was a great show, and then, or you can come with the idea that this could be life-changing. It can alter your brain chemistry, and you come with a new meaning of life. I think that's a really cool thing.
It was incredible for me seeing you guys play last night, though, because there was so much passion on that stage. And it's, she's always my litmus test. If there's a band that, she doesn't listen to this kind of music at all, don't think she'd heard anything with distorted guitar before we got together. But it's like, if she can see something special about a band on stage, not being from this music whatsoever, then that's kind of, to me, that says something. And the two bands that came out from this particular festival has been Mysterium and you guys.
Okay, yeah.
There was something really extraordinary. The way you guys performed, the way you were singing. It was just like you were clearly in your element and in the moment, present, and just loving and relishing every second that you had on that stage.
Yeah, I mean, that's the case. We feel it. I think for us, it's really important when we see other bands that you believe that they believe it. And so it's we really believe it, and I think that's a really important thing. It's like, okay, the show might go really badly sound wise, or all these things that the audience doesn't know about, but if we feel it and we really believe it, that's for us, that's the most important thing. So we can always be proud of what we did, because we felt it. And so there was that's the first conversation when we come off the stages. How did you feel it? And we really felt it yesterday. And with all shows, I think that's our main objective.
Yeah. Sorry, apologies for the racket in the background. How old were you when you met Andy?
We were, I don't know, it was like around 99, 2000 maybe.
Okay, so that was relatively close to the code being formed.
Yeah, it was quite. I guess it was quite fast between the demo to the album, and I think at the beginning there was another vocalist who we had on board when he was Seasonal Code, Scott, and we did the demo with him. And I think we'd always intended that he would be part of the album, and then I don't remember, for a different reason, Scott didn't take part, but it had been intended that there would be two singers. And then, I took over on the debut, and I brought Yusuf in because I knew him already from Norway. And then we found Eric, I think through Yusuf as well, the drummer from Ulver, who played drums on the first album. So it was us four that went into the album. We didn't really know each other very well. Me and Andy had only just had sort of email communication, and then a demo, and went straight to Finland to record this album, spending 3 weeks together. So it was a real case of getting to know each other as we did it. And I guess it wasn't an easy ride of things. We're quite different characters, all four of us. So that album is sort of like it was quite hard work to put together, I think. And I think all of us have an easier go of things now because of the experience from that record. You learn a lot.
There must still have been some degree of chemistry, though, for you guys to do something that would, especially at that time, was so unique and so against trend for where black metal was going at the time. Yeah,
there was definitely chemistry. I think me and Andy make really good music together, whether it's like folk stuff like the early Hexvessel or then with Code. So there's definitely a chemistry there. And then, of course, with Yusuf involved, with his experience. So I'm really proud of those records. And I think you can still hear that through my music today. The new Hexvessel has a lot of threads from the two Code albums. at least for me, and I've been hearing that from people who listen to the records as well.
I can hear that as well, for sure.
So yeah.
Talk to me about the development of your vocal style, because I've always had a theory about one song in particular that I'll share with you after we've spoken about the song. But your vocals have become better and better as you've grown older. Last night, as I said, amazing. On the last two albums, they sounded incredible. But I mean, even on something like Resplendent Grotesque, let's actually talk about that song, because that might be a nice sort of milestone point for me in vocal performances for you. My favorite song on that album, and one I will circle back on and kind of get stuck on for a week, where it's almost the only thing I listen to, is I Hold Your Light.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where did your vocal influences come from? Because it was so unique to that time and especially to that genre.
Yeah, I think I have to be careful about the way I put this, but I've been very influenced by female singers, because I think that a lot of, especially when you go to the early folk female singers, the 60s and stuff, it's kind of, I think they were fighting an uphill battle to show their feelings and to show a female perspective on the world. And I think that was quite radical, but you can hear it in the emotion in the voice, and I think that that's something that's been really influential for me, because I thought that there's like sort of emotion there that hasn't been quite captured. And a lot of the sort of early male vocals have this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just seeing it from the lens of this sort of dominance and power and like more about this sort of, I don't know, ownership and being a strong figure rather than being a vulnerable figure. So I've related to this vulnerability and this other view of the world in vocals. And it's very impossible for me to explain that, but yeah, there's been a lot of, I think on that record, I was really influenced by Patti Smith, her sort of voice of emoting without trying to sing. And then John Cage's Einstein on the Beach was a big, no, Philip Glass, sorry, John Cage. Philip Glass's Einstein on the Beach with the vocal arrangements. It was very layered. I got really into that on that album, and trying to do things that were like, it was just totally out of my league. And I wasn't capable of doing those vocals. And now I think if I did that album, I'd probably nail it, but then the emotion might not be the same. And it's kind of like the weakness and the vulnerability went tied in hand in hand with like the inability to actually do those vocals. You know, you can hear that I'm really struggling to hit those notes and to do it. And it took a long time and it was hard work and everything like that. So, but that just makes it what it is. You know, it's maybe it has some good naivety to it.
For me, it's perfect. It's a perfect song. I mean, a Hexvessel song that to me is perfect, that I have the same connection to, is Eternal Meadow. I'll talk to you about that as well. But it's interesting what you say about female vocalists. I had Kane Kressel from the Amento on the podcast once, and he was saying when he does vocal lessons and he teaches people, he says one of the things he encourages men to do is to sing along to songs sung by women.
Yeah.
And he likes, PJ Harvey for that. And, you mentioned a couple of different women where he says it's perfect to sing along to it, because he said if you're a man singing along to a song sung by a man, you naturally try to sound like the man.
Yeah.
But you can't sound like the woman. So when you're singing along with a woman, you're going to sound a lot more like yourself.
Well, we've got a lot of hang-ups, as men. We sort of have things that we need to look up to, and things that we need to be, and there's a lot of pressure on men to sort of be a certain way, be very masculine and to have this power and authority in the voice. And I think that like I said, there's a vulnerability in and sort of an expression which is quite different from the female perspective that I think it's good to be in tune to, so that you sing like yourself. You don't sing like something you think you should sound like. And I think there's a lot of guys who, in metal, they would like to do something folky and emotive, and they tend to sort of get the guitar out and do a Johnny Cash, because it's still tough, and they don't have to feel that they're letting their side down or anything like that. But I think that's not, you're not doing yourself justice. You're not being yourself. So I think it's a really good idea to get out of the bubble and what you think you should be, and you sing like yourself. And so I have a soprano vocal. I don't have this low vocal, but I think I'm able to get to places with the voice that I wouldn't necessarily be able to if I tried to sound like someone else.
Now, this was my theory about I Hold Your Light. I heard that song the first time and I was like, he sounds like Morten Harket from Aha. Has anyone ever said that to you?
No, I mean, it's a huge compliment because he has like, one of the best voices in the world, but also it's a voice which is, it's like oil in water for some people because it's so, I don't know what's the word, but it's a dividing voice. But I grew up with the stuff in the 80s. When you think about pop music in the 80s, it's so avant-garde.
Yeah.
Like Aha was like super weird vocals and stuff, and you listen to it now and it's like, oh my god, there's so many weird things happening. So yeah, but that was natural to me.
I've Been Losing You, and you go, this was a really famous pop song about somebody who killed somebody.
Yeah, so I think those early those 80s pop songs were definitely a massive influence, and Morten Harket's voice and vocalists like that. But I was when we did the Code second album, I was with a producer in the studio who was a real metal guy, and he was like the underground guy that people would go to make their black metal demos with. So he couldn't stand anything about what I was doing. So I was really out on my own, and the band wasn't there. I did the whole vocal session on my own. So I think that also gave it that thing where I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go for it. Like whatever I have in my head, I'm going to do it, as weird as it is, because this guy doesn't really understand. But which is a good thing, because I think if he had been more avant-garde and more in touch with all of the things that I'd wanted to do, he might have reined me in a bit by understanding. He might have gone, oh, I can hear what you're going for, but maybe do this and that. And so it might have made it a lot tamer and a lot less odd. But there's some really jarring things on that record, which I listen back to now, which I'm like, that's kind of cool though, because I wouldn't do that now. It's like it's really out of control, kind of in a silly way, but it's good. People should do emotional stuff.
It's a perfect product of its time in some respects.
Yeah.
When you talk about female vocalists and that conveying of emotion, I do think what a lot of the best female vocalists do better, I think, than men in the main is convey subtlety. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with PJ Harvey, but there's a song she does called A Beautiful Feeling. And there's a part in the last verse where she says, when I watch you move, and she does a slight change in the way that she sings the melody, versus how she sang it in the second and first verse, but it makes such a massive difference.
Yeah.
It completely changes the inflection and the feel of the song.
Yeah. I think it's a really great thing to do something emotionally with vocals and what you want to achieve in a more emotional way. And I think it's just that perspective, what's been allowed, what's been acceptable. The male perspective on things has been accepted. You're supposed to sort of be in control, and I think there's a good thing about having some sort of emotional vulnerability, but also this ambiguity, with where you come from.
How have you felt about the response that you've had from a long-time Hexvessel fans, people that have followed your career, to Nocturne and to Veil?
I think it's been good, and I think most people have been with us. I was very surprised at certain times. I thought maybe there would be people who would complain that they want something more like the first album. So I think we've been really lucky in a way that what we started out doing has nurtured a fan base who's very accepting of change and also of the different facets of me and my music. And like I said, it's primarily a kind of metal audience, but a metal audience who has an open mind. So the type of people we meet at the merch stand and at the gigs are just like our kind of people. And I knew that. So it's kind of like a conscious thing that I thought, I can do this with this band. And I'm pretty sure that people who like it were going to come with me on that. And that's the reaction that I've had, as people have been like, oh God, I'm just waiting for you guys to break out and do some metal or something, So I think there's that feeling of they're getting exactly sort of what they would have wanted from the band. And that they're glad that we're showing the different sides. And we've been doing these shows now where we do some of the older folk material and sometimes in the middle of the set, or then a whole different set of folk material and then the metal set. And that works really well. It's kind of works surprisingly well that people are with us through the whole thing, And I think with other bands, they're not so lucky with that, in that there might be bigger expectations. I think about Opeth, who played yesterday. They've also explored, but you do find that there's a very divided crowd of those who like the prog stuff, those who like the metal stuff, and those who like the folk. and they're not always on the same page. And that must be a bit difficult when it comes to doing a set. So we're really lucky that everybody's been kind of mostly, for the majority, on board, and I'm really glad about that. And it seems like we're also riding a new wave of people paying attention to us. So that's also, obviously a nice
That's a
thing.
very interesting contrast that you make there, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm speaking as an Opeth fan. To me,
It's
up
a
to
great
Blackwater Park, God tier,
Yeah.
the prog stuff, I can't stand the sound of. Whereas with you guys, I know totally different kind of music, but I've always been this kind of Paradise Lost fan that was like, I was on board with where Shades of God went, Icon, Draconian Times. I even liked Host when it came out.
Yeah.
It's the same with you guys. Like I've always enjoyed every single thing that you've put out, and I don't know. As you were mentioning the Opeth thing, I was sitting here kind of briefly thinking, like, what is the difference between the two? Have you conditioned people into accepting that, into accepting that they need to expect the unexpected?
Yeah, I think if we'd started off as a metal band, we probably would have that problem,
Yeah.
and it's just a thing, and I guess it's sort of about tradition as well. We're, as metal fans, we're kind of conditioned to that. If you start off as metal, you need to stay true to that. And so it's harder to move from metal to something else. If you think about Ulver, what they did was so radical, but from the perspective of nowadays, it's not radical at all. It's just, it's great, it's artistic, and it would all just, not create any ripples at all. But at the time, it was so very shocking to go from metal to something completely different. But that's maybe a bad example. The Opeth example is a good one, in that I think they probably found it a little bit more difficult, and being so very open-minded and so multi-talented and so kind of like varied in what they can put out. That's probably been a bit frustrating that at times that their fan base hasn't always been on board. But luckily so far we haven't had that. But I think maybe if I think about the more psych rock parts of the band, those albums when we had Death and stuff like that. But then on those albums, we've also had very folky songs. So I think it's sort of balanced out a bit. The psych rock experimentation of the band is maybe the bit where I feel like we jumped the shark a little bit. We got out of my comfort zone, but that's also part of exploration. You try things out, you do things, you go in ways that you think, okay, maybe we were just a bit off.
I mean, if you base it on your track record, I'm going to assume going with what's in your gut and going with what for you is an authentic expression of where you're at artistically at the time, that trumps all. So fan feedback, critical feedback, everything else is a completely it's a non-equator when it comes into.
Well, I'd be a fraud, if I just did things that I wanted to get people to like. And I mean, I'm saying that the fan base is really on board. But that's the fan base, and it's a small group of people. I'm sure that we're sort of an anathema to a lot of people because of just being so very different. And I'm really fine with that. I think it's really important. I like to be a band that's kind of like that can be quite divisive. And we have a lot of situations where we sort of have a kind of grumpy, arms folded metal guy who has to come to the show with his girlfriend, who might really like the band. I know that's kind of like a bad stereotype, but it happens a lot. And we went to Greece, and it was a lot kind of like that. This big portion of the fan base was sort of like these metal guys that had dragged along with their girlfriends, But I think it's now we have something actually for them to listen to as well. So it works out.
I don't think until I started coming to festivals in Europe I ever appreciated metal is I'm going to try and find the right words. It is appreciated and consumed in a different way on the continent than it is in the UK.
Yeah.
And I never realized the difference would be so distinct until I started coming to festivals overseas.
Yeah, it's interesting like that. I mean, Opeth I got into through my wife, who's has a very varied music taste. But I had this prejudice about it being sort of girls metal, and then listening to it through her, and going to the shows, I was blown away and became a fan of the band. But it wasn't something I liked from the beginning. And so I think that can be seen like that. Like we probably have a lot of people who would really enjoy our new albums who just won't touch Hexvessel because of either the folk beginning or the psychedelic rock part. And I get it, but I would sort of say to those people that I've always done what I wanted to do, and I've always done something different. We don't ever sound like anybody else, and that I think is a good thing. I've always followed a sort of my passion with it, and I think that's something commendable. Even if you don't like the music, you have to admit we're not in a genre, you know, with a lot of other bands. There's so many bands that sound like every other band, and we've never done that. So
I smiled when you said girls metal, though, because you're a guy that clearly has a very eclectic taste in music. But having a gander at the pins you've got on, Dark Throne immediately catches my eye. But then you also have one of the fucking greatest and most underloved, at least by non Danzig fans, underloved bands of all time, Samhain.
Yeah.
But your musical journey, where did it start, and how did it kind of start to evolve and metastasize into this, morass of what you listen to now?
Probably, I mean, like discovering my sister's music collection and getting into that, and music is a means of escape, I think, from a kind of maybe a home that didn't really nurture an artistic spirit, and sort of art wasn't seen as something that was seen as a kind of a waste of time, maybe, and should concentrate on studies and things like that. And I was clearly a very, very artistic child who didn't get that side nurtured. So I think that listening to music sort of like it kind of consoled that side of me, and I found solace in it to kind of understand who I was. And so listening to a lot of I think at that time it would have been a lot of new wave stuff. They were listening to Susie and the Banshees, Duran Duran, and The Cure and things like that. So that was like the foundation, and then from there getting into stuff like from going from sort of goth and new wave pop to discovering metal, and thrash metal was the main thing.
I see you've got the Creator T-shirt on.
Yeah, and it's sort of it means a lot from the foundation of giving me the access to music.
Final question, because I know you've got a hard stop, and again, this comes totally from a fan perspective. I feel like there's so much we could still talk about, but I know you've got to go. But total fan question. Mentioned Eternal Meadow to you. That's a song that from the second I heard it, I just had a very, very deep connection to it. Weirdly enough, I think partly because my daughter's name is Meadow. So I think there's I know it's not about a little girl, but there was just a connection that formed there, I think partly as a result of that. But tell me just about the creation of that song and where the idea came from, recording it, your memories of putting it together and writing.
Well, it's like one of the more, say brutal, but it's one of the more straight ahead black metal songs on the record, and in creating that, I felt like it needed a counter way. It had like this counter side to the melodies and stuff that's very kind of melancholic and nostalgic. And so I had this idea I really wanted to create a song for my friend Timo Kettola, the artist, who had become a friend of ours, a good friend of ours, of my family before he died. And I wanted to create something that would really commemorate him in the right way. And I was thinking about this sort of song which would talk about how his artwork had become so eternal, and so he becomes eternal. And so that's the idea of the song. And there were these. I was reading a lot of Finnish mythology and songs, old songs, from times before Christianity, and this idea that sort of nature gives thanks and sort of breathes a sigh of thanks for your existence. And I think that was sort of his thing as well, in where he came from, being partly Finnish and being very interested in mythology as well, and a lot of our discussions of this idea. So I really wanted to weave that all into a song about him, and it's nice because we go and play that song in different places, and then I mentioned that this is for my friend, but then it's also for your friends or your family or anybody you think about that you love. They don't have to be dead either. It can just be about someone becoming eternal by what they do. And it's been a beautiful thing because for example, we played in Romania, and these guys came, and they just came to the merch stand, and they were full of tears, and they were very thankful that they'd come to this town because this was a town where their friend had moved to, and he'd passed away, and they'd never come to visit him in that town when he'd asked them to, but then he died, and then they came to the town to say goodbye to him, to bury him, and they had just turned up to the show randomly. They saw there was a metal show, they're metal guys, and he was a metal guy, and they came to the show and they'd heard us for the first time, and we played this song, and it was like, for them, it was just like, oh my God, what a weird synchronicity. But that was a beautiful thing, because Timo always invited me down to Rome, and I never went to visit him, and I regret it forever. But you think about these things forever, but it's a nice thing to go and share these emotions anyway when you play music, and you realize that there isn't really enough of that for people. You've got these bands like My Dying Bride and Anathema and things like that are really important emotionally for people to share these deep tragic things, and Anathema definitely got me through some really hard times in life and stuff. So I think for us that's also an important aspect of Hexvessel, so we sort of go to places that maybe you wouldn't usually go with music, but it's important to go to, even at the risk of being kind of twee and over emotional. I think it's a risk worth taking.
It's an incredibly life-affirming song as well, especially the end part that you're singing. It's you cannot. It's interesting you mentioned about these guys coming to you and being overcome with emotion themselves. You can't help but be overcome by emotion.
Yeah.
The way you executed that, the way you sing that part, the way you did it last night is masterful.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, on that note, I know you need to run. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And let's do this again at some point down the road.
Yeah, would love to. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cheers.
scattered dust, shake now from sleep's long lips. All we have lost and done, stars, pearls, and leaded tears on our closed eyes.
Hexvessel coming your way with a track called Sapphire Zephyrs, and I just spoke to Matt McNerney from the band. He will be back on the show, but I want to say a massive thank you to him. We were under a little bit of time constraint. We had from about 3:15 in the afternoon until about 4 when they needed to catch a bus and head back from whence they came. And of course, the hotel staff, as you can hear, were very accommodating. As soon as we started speaking, they decided now's the time to start clanging glasses like a bunch of fucking school children. I tried my very best to edit that out of the conversation as much as I could. Hopefully it wasn't too distracting. But either way, Matt and I will talk again. We've already spoken about it offhand or offline. Offhand. I think this is a good primer, this conversation we had here, for a more in-depth discussion at some point down the road. Now, one thing that we discussed whilst we were speaking was the band Code. I make no secret of the fact that I love this band, always have, always will. And back on June the 1st, 2009, they put out a record called Resplendent Grotesque. From that record, a song that Matt and I discussed, one that I would take with me to a desert island. Again, need to be open-minded to enjoy it, but I absolutely fucking love it. I think many of you will too. This is a track called I Hold Your Light.
All a magician saw me now. Roll me from your hand, break my body, break my back, drag me through wives, lawns and suburbs. You, the great destroyer of my childhood, like a ship that was lost in a storm. I will lie in the grave and stretch out my arms. I will lay this body down. I will lay this body down. When the evening of judgment has come, when I
That was I Hold Your Light by Code off the album Resplendent Grotesque, released on the now non-existent Taboo Recordings, so no idea where you might find that if you want to buy yourself an offline copy, but I know for an absolute fact that it's on Spotify, on the streaming services, and it may very well be on Bandcamp. So as always, the link to the Code Bandcamp will be in the notes to the podcast, as will be the Bandcamps for Izmir and Hexvessel. So if you head over there and buy yourself some music, then do let the gang know who it was who sent you. My friends, right now, I'm joined by the Reverend, the Sinister Minister, Karl Hikara for the Weekly News Rant. But before I get to that, let me just give you a quick word of warning. If you think that the band Kneecap is anything other than a pint glass full of dog diarrhea, then it's time to hit the bricks, because this is my Weekly News Rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Well, if it isn't the Sinister Minister, Karl Hikara. How you doing, brother?
Not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you very much. But I'm gonna have to dive into this one literally right at the beginning of the news rant. It has been a fucking horrific weekend for South African sports. First, our national rugby team, the Springboks, get humiliated in I think it's probably one of our worst humiliations in the nation's history. Up 22 points to 0 in the first quarter of the game, lose 22 points to 38 to Australia by the end of the game. The greatest comeback in Australian rugby history. So congratulations to the Australian chapter of the Legion that actually follows rugby. I mean, that was an absolute masterclass, but fucking hell, what an embarrassment. And then the next embarrassment, the pain and humiliation was then heaped on even more when DDP, Dricus du Plessis, lost to fucking Hugsy Chimaev at UFC 319. And I did say that I was going to put some money on it. I'll post the receipts later today on Instagram. I bet £100 on that. £100 now lost. So,
Oh, man.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's been a tough weekend on old Jackson. I'm not going to lie.
That's the danger of putting your money where your mouth is sometimes.
Correct. Well, you know what? That's the problem. I knew as soon as I put money on it, I knew it's game over. He's going to lose now. What I do need to do next time is just have a little side bet going on whoever I want to actually bet against, and that might, I don't know, maybe karmically that'll balance things out. But either way. What a fucking shambles. A nation lies in tatters. A nation's dreams lie in tatters.
Well,
Fortunately, though, we got some fucking good music to listen to. And you know what's ironic? We connected, and I mean, it wasn't pre-planned. We just happened to time it previously so that we were talking, or we were doing a news rant together when the first Paradise Lost single was being released. And guess what? New Paradise Lost single again this week. So I was very happy when I saw that.
yeah, it's good timing there.
I know that you have almost certainly listened to the song, as have I. So I'm just going to give that one away at the start. This is one of those where it's not the first time we're hearing it. I've listened to this multiple times, but just to give a bit of a preamble, the article here reads, Paradise Lost have released a new single, Tyrant's Serenade, as part of their forthcoming studio record Ascension. The accompanying music video was directed by Ash Pears, whatever the fuck his surname is. This is, what's crazy is that this is their 17th album. And of the three singles they've put out so far, I mean, I'll give you my thoughts on single 3 in a second. But the first two, I thought, knocked it out of the park. Well, what about you? What's your thoughts?
I thought so as well. I did think that the second one, I like the music more. I thought the vocals, I really felt like Nick should have done some clean singing on that second song.
Yeah.
Like it really felt like kind of like there was something missing, because it just felt like he should have been doing some clean singing in the chorus instead of doing the kind of talk growl thing he was doing. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my only one complaint so far between the singles. So
yeah, I would agree. Outlaw Scandado and I think identified that as well when we listened to the song on the news rant that he did with me, because
that came out then. So absolutely agree with you on that. But let's find out what they got up to on Tyrant's Serenade, and then we'll discuss the song after. I'll pause there. What do you think?
I think for me, it's the best song so far, the best single, and I also think it's the best video. So,
Well, I was going to comment on that. Thank God they didn't include a load of adults crying through on this video. I mean, I would say that previous one that they did. I mean, I know there was. It seems seemingly some AI in the music video, and I'm talking specifically about the one that had like the medieval battle scene and stuff like that. I mean, like I said to you, I don't mind that so much because, as far as I'm concerned, it's I don't really care about music videos unless they're deplorably shit. But yeah, I agree with you. Best music video of the three songs. Arguably my favorite song, maybe neck and neck with the first single that they put out, but definitely better than the second. I love the dueling vocals, that growling, clean singing interplay sounds fucking fantastic, absolutely spot on. It's what should have been on that second single that we referred to earlier. And then, I mean, it's just classic Paradise Lost riff. You've got this awesome lead coming over the top, delivered by Greg. Again, a very textbook. You can instantly identifiable as a Greg McIntosh lead. I think this is top notch, no question about it.
Definitely. I think it might be interesting for them to do at some point is have Nick singing clean and Greg doing his kind of death growls he does for Strigoi. I think that would be kind of interesting to have kind of different vocals.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I've thought about that before. I might even have mentioned it, on news rants gone by. It feels to me like they're sitting on an asset there that they're not using, because I mean I like Nick's death growls, but I will say Greg's death growls run circles around Nick's.
Yeah, they are like what he does for Strigoi. I mean, I think, like, for example, that track right there, that would have been a perfect time for Greg to do some of his Strigoi vocals with Nick singing. That would have been cool.
I 100% agree. I mean, I know you're a fan of Strigoi. I'm going to assume you're a fan of Valenfire as well.
Yeah, although I think I like Strigoi better, but I think Valenfire is pretty sick as well. So.
You know what? One of the best vocal performances are by Greg on those Valenfire records. The song "Splinters" off the second album. They did a music video for it as well, which actually is pretty decent also. But my God, it is one of the most sinister, darkest, most aggressive things in that style of music. Just absolute magic.
Yeah, what Greg was doing on the Strigoi stuff is pretty incredible, or Strigoi and Valenfire, you know, both those bands, like doing the kind of getting a bit more aggressive than he does with Paradise Lost, and also a little bit more just caustic, you know, in general, and also
bit more throaty.
yeah, and then there's with Strigoi in particular, you're getting some like Funeral Doom elements and stuff like that, which is cool. So, and I like the combination. You know, I think that the last Strigoi album, I mean, I think it was like number 2 of my for my year or something like that, or number 3. So, you know, it was one of my favorites of that year.
On that topic, how's your list coming on this year?
It's coming along okay. I'm being a lot more aggressive this year as far as what's making the short list, the shorter list. You know what I mean? So right now I have like a list of everything, and then I have then I have another playlist on Spotify of the stuff that is I like enough that could be on the list, but I'm just being a bit more aggressive with that in the sense of like really trying to focus in on the stuff that like I feel compelled to go back to. So there, you know, sometimes you might listen to something, you know, a handful of times and you go, oh, this is pretty good, good enough to be on like the bigger list, or, you know, honorable mention, or, you know, because really I look at, because I do like a top 50, but really that's like the top 30 with 20 that's kind of like the best of the rest in a way, or stuff that but it's like you know, last couple of years there are a few things where I put like stuff that I listened to a couple times that I knew that I knew was very, very good and I liked it, but I didn't go back to it. This year I'm thinking I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive and just put the stuff that I'm actually listening to, you know what I mean?
I will say, I think this year I could do a top 20 and be reasonably comfortable with that. There's definitely less coming out this year that I've been excited about than there was last year.
Oh,
by
yeah,
this point
100%.
by this point last year, I think my my playlist for 2025 was probably, for 2024 was probably about double the size that my 2025 playlist is. And I'm like you, I'm trying to thin out the numbers from the beginning and focus just on stuff that I know has lasting power. There's not actually been a lot of albums that have come out this year that I would say, man, I'm going to listen to that in 5 years' time from now.
Yeah, there's been a handful. My short list right now is, I mean, I think it's probably like, well, it says it's 21 hours, so it's about 20 albums, you know, or 25 albums or something right now, and then those are going to get cut out, you know. But you know, there's a few, like the Svartsen album was really high for me. And you know, a handful of others, Serpents and Herseer, I really like that one. Enneveld, and you know, there's a few, and some that haven't come out yet that I know are quite good, like the Tombs album. So you know, like which I already know is going to be pretty high on my list. So you know, New Hate Forest will be high on my list. But
you can't listen to Hate Forest. You cannot be a guest on this podcast and listen to Hate Forest. Don't you know that they're Nazis?
I'm so sorry. Remember when that one?
Sorry, sir.
Remember when that one fucking loser apologized for saying that he liked Hate Forest?
Oh yeah.
I can't. What band was that? I forget.
Dude.
Some stupid band, I think.
There was some fucking nutcase. Now, one thing that as the podcast has grown, the crazies have come out of the woodwork a little bit more, and they'll feature in my swirly of the week as well, specific to the Galsverd interview of last week. But there was one idiot that posted on my Fortress Festival, my venue walkthrough that I did, posted this long rant about Nas, how he's on steroids. They were talking about his ex-girlfriend. I mean, this is like a comment that was held, so I actually only noticed it on Friday. It had been posted like 5-6 weeks ago, talking about how he's on steroids, calling him a midget, all sorts of crazy shit. And then right at the end of this fucking just slobbering, delirious rant, they write in massive capitals, "Why are fascists allowed to play at this festival?" I'm like, dude, someone should stick you in a fucking cannon and literally fire you as far out into the ocean as possible. You are a fucking waste of skin.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
There's strange people out in this world, mate. Strange fucking people. All right, let's listen to another song, and then I want to talk a little bit about your music. Now, today is the day have announced a new full-length release. It says "Never Give In" has been set as the official title of the newly announced studio album from Today is the Day, due out on October the 3rd. It was recorded, mixed, and mastered at Austin Enterprise Recording and Mastering in Orlando, Maine, or Orland, Maine, whatever the fuck, by the band's main man, Steve Austin. To taste the first piece of the new music, give a listen to the first single title track. Are you a fan of Today's the Day?
Yeah, I've listened to some Today's the Day, mostly because of Mike Hill, because I know he's a huge fan of theirs. So it's because of him I've checked out some of their back catalog, and I quite like a lot of it. I'm not like super well versed in the band, you know what I mean? Like, but it's like I've been getting more into them, like, because I know back when Mike's the Metal Matters stuff is still up. I know he did some episodes about Today's the Day, and that's kind of what turned me on to them, you know.
Yeah, I was interested in them probably more so during the In the Eyes of God and Sadness Will Prevail eras. They were a very different band to what I think they are nowadays. But I didn't spend a huge amount of time with No Good to Anyone. I think 2020 was just one of those years where there were so many other things distracting me. To be honest with you, that completely flew under my radar. But that being said, let's hear what this song sounds like. As I said, it's off the forthcoming album Never Give In, and it's the title track off the record. So we'll give it a quick whirl.
What's in your vision? Can't you see what's in your mind? I can't live in isolation. It's a lonely, lonely ride.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I was liking it, but I didn't like that last section. I don't like that kind of talking.
Yeah, no.
Vocal thing.
I don't give a fuck what country you're from, but there are very, very few bands or songs that can get away with or benefit from just some dude talking. I think it always sounds so incredibly pretentious.
Particularly when you're just saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
it doesn't,
like it's supposed to be something profound.
It didn't really do, that part didn't do it for, at the start. I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool," and then I was like, there's definitely very 90s, underground, that gave me that feeling of like a lot of that kind of stuff. And then that talking part also, unfortunately, gave me the bad side of the 90s thing, because you think about like the Sonic Youth at their worst, where they have the stupid like talking and stuff like that. It's like that was kind of giving me that kind of feeling. I was like, I'm not so. Unfortunately, I wasn't really feeling that part. So I don't know. Maybe it gets good after that. But
did you get the impression that Steve Austin is trying his best to sound like Lou Reed on the song?
A little bit, particularly that section. And again, not the good Lou Reed either. So
Lulu era Lou Reed.
Because unfortunately, Lou Reed kind of went in that direction. I'm a big fan of Velvet Underground and a lot of Lou Reed's 70s and early 80s stuff, but he definitely, after a while, started doing the kind of talk singing thing, and I got a little tired of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think instrumentally, it started off good. I thought, this is definitely different to the Today Is the Day I'm most familiar with. If you want something ballsy, noise rockish, you're not getting it. Yeah. But, we all grow older. Doing what he's inspired to do, great. Good on him.
My guess is at some point it's going to get noise rocky and crazy, like,
Well, shall we skip to minute 4? And let's see where we're at there. Let's give it another 60 seconds and see if anything has changed.
Yeah, let's take a...
Should we take a bet on whether or not we're still going to hear the talk chanting, or whether they're going to have tapped that distortion pedal by this point?
Well, it's either we're going to... I don't know. It's anybody's guess. I don't know.
Let's hit play and let's see.
See everything. Take a look in the mirror right now. I can't remember a blue sky day, a place I threw away.
So he did actually step up on the vocal side, but it somehow made the song sound even worse.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but it's getting thumbs down for me. So
major fucking thumbs down. And that's the kind of song that, honestly, if our band were next door, we'd be going in there and taking their lunch money every single day. So
yeah, I'm like, it's definitely not Today Is the Day that I've heard. So
Well, speaking of bands, Black Flame Altar, very nice. Very nicely done, and congratulations, because you got some of probably the best response as far as people messaging me saying really like that of just about any band I've played in recent memory on the News Rant. So well done, man.
Oh, that's great to hear, and thank you for premiering the song. That whole project came together pretty quick because Drew Goth have the Antichrist Blood Scourge. We're releasing an EP for that for Halloween, which is already pretty much done. Which of course in October there'll be another premiere for that. But I just had this kind of urge to make some kind of more, I guess grim and cold black metal. A little bit like my tribute to 90s, early 2000s black metal in a way, you know what I mean? And I kind of brought it up to Drew Goth, and at first I was just thinking that I'd just send him some of the guitar tracks, and he'd do drums, but he was into the whole concept, so it became a collaborative, second band for us essentially, kind of. And to be honest, it took us from the moment we created the project to from conception to that premiere was about a month. So it came together very quickly. I did that, and we made the whole EP done and dusted in about under 2 weeks. So all 4 songs. I mean, it's only 4 songs, so it's not like that crazy, but like I wrote the first 3 songs, and well, I wrote the first 3. Trugoth rearranged the third track, the track that we played on that we premiered on Necrosphere, which was for the best. Like he cut out like a whole riff and rearranged the riffs and made the song 1,000 times better. So that was pretty cool. I mean, that's the nice part about collaboration with somebody like Trugoth, who has a really strong ear for songwriting. That if he's like, not like this is better, usually he's right. You know what I mean? So, and then he wrote the drum beat for the last song, and I wrote the riffs to that. So it was a very, very collaborative process across the whole thing. And I ended up recording pretty much doing all the main tracking on like I don't know, about a week. Just did one track, and then next one. Look, I've had more time. Ironically, I got promoted at work, and I've also had more time in my life because of it. So, you make more money, you have a bit more time in your life. It's kind of funny.
Sadly, mate, that is not the case for me. With every promotion, my fucking time has been chewed up exponentially. By the way, I don't know how I'm not that well versed in American geography that I can tell off the top of my head how far Nashville is from Cleveland. Not Cleveland, sorry, from Colorado. But I'm going to be in Nashville for a work event in mid-October, like the 5th. I think it's the 15th of October. But then my plan is to stay an extra day. So the work event is from the Wednesday to the Friday, and then I'm going to stay there until the Sunday. So if for some bizarre reason you're able to find yourself in Nashville on the Saturday, then come hang.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Nashville is not exactly close, so it's
I just out of interest, I knew it probably wouldn't be, by the way, but I couldn't not mention it. Out of interest, how far more or less?
Well, it's about a day and a half drive.
Motherfuck, no. Don't worry about that. I won't take that as an insult if you're not there.
Because it takes about a good day of driving to get to St. Louis, and then Nashville's another, I think, 8 hours from there. I've driven through Nashville a couple times, but it's or at least once. I've driven through it once, but yeah, it's because it's definitely well, no, I've driven through it twice. Yeah, the last time was when my friend moved out to South Carolina. I helped him move, and yeah, I think it's the first day we got to St. Louis, outside of St. Louis, midway between like somewhere in that area, and then which took like 10 hours, and then or 12 hours, and then yeah, Nashville. We didn't hit Nashville until like 8 o'clock the next day. So
yeah, no, like I said, I shan't take it as an insult, but I had to mention you were also a better man than I to do that move. Fucking, I'm not, I consider myself a good friend, but I'd say I'll give you some money to pay the movers to do it, so I don't have to do it. All right, let's listen to some more music. Wode have got their 4th studio record due in October. On October the 3rd, 2025, they say, yeah, British black metal crew Wode returns with their 4th studio album entitled Uncrossing the Keys. The latter was recorded and mixed by James Atkinson at the Station House and mixed by Tomas Lindberg. Are you a fan of Wode?
I can't say that I've ever listened to them, so I don't know. I have no idea.
For some bizarre reason, there's a contingent of people here in the UK that, all but cream their little shorts at the mention of the name Wode. I have never really bothered to listen in great detail to any of their albums. What I have listened to, I've always thought was decent, but I've never gone, man, this is fucking incredible. So they've never blown me away to the extent that I've deemed them to be essential listening. But I'm sure a lot of people are very excited about this. It's the follow-up to Burn in Many Mirrors that came out in 2021. Did I listen to that album? Actually, you know what? I think I might have. Because that does. I'm looking at the cover now, but again, this maybe comes back to what we said about putting our lists together. There's sometimes you'll have something that at the time you think is great. It's maybe even a contender for a list, but you just never have you're just never compelled to go back to it.
Yeah, Wode is a band that I've definitely seen that name around, but if I have listened to it, I have no memory of it. So yeah.
I need to double check whilst we listen to the song whether that was, because this is going to be the ultimate fucking irony. If that album made my top of that year, that's going to be hysterical. No, it didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't. It's just looking now. Thank God it didn't actually.
Then you have to eat the words you just said. Yeah.
Fucking you imagine? I've been ignoring these boring motherfuckers for years. Well, there we go. They were number 4 on my top list. That's another thing. Like you do sometimes forget some of the bands that you've had on that on lists gone by, because there's so many fucking albums that come out.
Yeah, and there are some like where I'll go back and look at my list from the previous years and go, yeah, that was a pretty good album. There's some of them that really stick with you, and there's other ones you kind of have to revisit. You know what I mean? And there's some that you actually end up liking better over time, and you kind of may have put it higher up if you had more chances to listen to it. So
correct. But I do remember Burn in Many Mirrors now, and I do remember liking it. But again, they're just not a band that I've, this isn't a Cleese or one of the many other great bands that I tend to go back to a lot more often. I mean, when it comes to British black metal, I think between Trivax and Abduction, those two bands are the tip of the spear as far as I'm concerned. Their last 2 albums will both be on my best of lists for this year. I think that shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but yeah, Wode I wouldn't put on the same level. That being said, let us hear what Transmutation sounds like. So I think right off the bat, let's just get one thing out of the way. That's not black metal. You can call yourself black metal if you want, but there's no fucking way that anyone in their right mind that listens to black metal, knows the genre, is going to listen to that and go, yeah, this is this takes me back to Emperor, Satyricon, Burzum, whatever the case may be.
So that's not black metal.
It's not even the doomier side of black metal. You know, you think of like Samael and stuff like that. Like this isn't even that. It's like just straight up like shitty doom metal. To be honest, I hated that. To be honest, I thought it sounded really lame. So
yeah, it sounds gormless. It sounds like there's just no. It sounds plodding. It just feels like it has no real kind of purpose, no direction. You know, like you hear certain bands, and it just sounds like everything. You know, there's a target, there's a goal. Everyone is focused. Everyone is kind of locked into wanting to achieve the same thing, and it comes out in the recording. This to me, just I don't know. This sounds like they didn't know what to do on the album. They needed 8 songs, and they were like, "Well, let's chuck this one in there. Let's do let's try and do a Paradise Lost style doom song and chuck that in there," and it just doesn't work.
But it's not even good. It's not a good doom song because it sounds too happy. It sounds very like jolly, you know, like
yeah.
From the start, I was like, "Oh, it sounds very major key, kind of jolly." Nothing dark or sinister or interesting about it at all to me. Like to me, it just seemed like very like, even as a doom song, it's a failure in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like it's not the kind of doom that I'm a big fan of. Like a lot of different kinds of doom, and that isn't even a good doom song. I'm sorry if like somebody out there is your favorite band or something, but for me, like I thought that was awful. You know, I thought it was genuine.
There's no point apologizing on the news rant, mate. This is the Wild West. When you go in, and when you go past the Bane intro, you know it's fucking all systems go when it comes to opinions being shared and stuff like that. And some of it people aren't going to like. I don't. Anyone who's got that Wode tattoo on their leg, you should be embarrassed. This is awful.
This is genuinely just bad. You know, like. You know, either as a black metal song, as a doom metal song, as a song, does nothing for me. You know, like I was like kind of like laughing at it. I was just playing because it just sounded so goofy to me. You know.
Yeah, I want to go back and listen to "Burn in Many Mirrors" because I know that I enjoyed that when it came out, and I want to hear what's different. But you know, I think I should also say when I highlight that this is a segment for shit talking. Just because a band has one bad song or one bad album doesn't mean you have to write the whole band off. I mean, there's bands that have very high profile bands, in my opinion, that have one absolutely fucking incredible album, and then almost everything else of theirs I couldn't stand. Now, would I regard myself as a massive fan of the band? No, but I'm still a big fan of that particular album. I'll still admit that that's great. One of those bands happens to be Megadeth. Now, let's get up something that I want to show you very quickly because, of course, most people should know by now the news that Megadeth announced this past Friday that they are going to be they're at the end of the road. They're going to be splitting up after their new album or forthcoming album and their next tour. And they did it in the absolute most Megadeth way imaginable. So let me just pause here very quickly while I queue up that video, and we can watch that, and we can talk about this earth-shattering news straight after that.
It's good, but his vocals just ruin it, man. I can't do it.
All right, so here we go. Megadeth, The End is Near. This was a 1-minute trailer that they released 2 days ago announcing the news. Let's give this a little watch.
Some say this is the end of times.
Erupting! We need to go!
Get out of the cities. It's over.
This will be our last broadcast.
This is Vic Rattlehead. For over 4 decades, I've been chained in silence. But the end demands my voice. It is confirmed the next Megadeth studio album will be the last. 40 years of metal, forged in steel, ending in fire. And when the new year rises, the global farewell tour. You've heard the warning. Now prepare yourself, Cyber Army. Stay loud. Stay tuned and meet me on the front lines.
So a nice little AI video there.
Well, you know what that video reminded me a lot of? When you're standing online at the roller coaster. So there's a roller coaster in you're in the UK at a place called Thorpe Park, called Swarm. They have lame videos like that playing whilst you're standing in the queue, and it's cool there because it enhances the experience. But yeah, like I said, to me, when I saw this, I immediately thought it is so typically Mustaine. It's just unbelievable. It's I mean, it's utterly cringeworthy. It just looks so bad. It looks like it was ripped straight out of fucking 2003. And you know, there is a part of me that sat here thinking when I watched it the first time: is Dave announcing Megadeth's farewell now because he doesn't want to do it after Metallica announced theirs, and you know, in so doing, take the shine off, in his mind, Megadeth departing?
Probably, yeah. He want, because it's been fucking 40 years and he can't ever get over being kicked out of Metallica because he'll bring it up literally every single time he opens his fucking mouth. So and I mean, like,
yeah,
it's either whining about being kicked out of Metallica or talking about how he can kill somebody with his magic powers. So
with his jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Have you ever read his autobiography?
Oh no, but
dude,
yeah.
that is. I mean, it's literally, there's multiple chapters dedicated to his martial arts prowess and how he sprung into action at in a particular situation and could have killed the guy, but he's teaching from his sensei taught him to hold back, to show control.
My friend actually worked at a Starbucks where Dave Mustaine came in and ordered a frappuccino. He ordered a caramel frappuccino, very unmanly, and with extra caramel. And I always remember that because my friend thought it was kind of funny, And my friend said that Dave Mustaine looked like he couldn't beat up a fucking twig when you see him in real life, in person. You know what I mean? Like in everyday life.
Well, I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact, in my view, I think Rusted Peace is an almost perfect album, and I actually like his vocals on that record as well. I think his vocals suit the album. Most of everything else they did, with the exception of a couple of songs here or there, mostly just trash. Peace Sells, but Who's Buying, possibly a bit of an exception. But he's just, I mean, he's kind of a great example of how ugly bitterness can be. Because to your point, he never got over the Metallica thing. You'd have these videos where you had this during the Big Four tour where they reunite and, there's hugs and handshakes and whatnot. And then literally 2 months later, he's doing an interview and he's going on about how much better Megadeth were than Metallica and how he had something to prove and he can't believe that he was kicked out of the band. And it's just like the cycle just keeps on repeating itself. And you look at it eventually and you go, Jesus, dude, you're a multi-millionaire doing something that's a very, very small portion of people in the world ever get the opportunity to do, which is make a fantastic living off of music. You're in one of the biggest bands on the face of the earth that you built up yourself, and you still cannot stop sobbing about something that happened in fucking 1982.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, I'm sorry that you're not as big as Metallica, but I mean, one thing I'll give Megadeth is at least, he never made a Saint Anger, you know what I mean? Like that's one thing I'll give Dave Mustaine is that Megadeth never really made, they made a lot of boring albums, but they never made a total trash heap like Metallica have done. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I don't know about that, because I would say Risk and The World Needs a Euro. That's if I had to choose between listening to either one of those or listening to Saint Anger, it's going to be a tough decision.
I think I'd still rather listen to Risk, even though I don't even really like Megadeth. I think Saint Anger is one of the worst albums ever made. So I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. I don't know.
That's a tough one. That's a choice no man should have to make.
That is a
Put
tough
it that
choice.
way.
That is true. I did figure out that album, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that like, I just ultimately think that yeah, you might not be selling out arena like big old like football stadiums like Metallica does, but you know he's still selling out giant arenas. Like the last time he sells out the fucking Pepsi Center here, like which is basically like a hockey arena. Like it's nothing. That's where Nine Inch Nails played. It's nothing to sneeze at. You know what I mean? It's like it's pretty. So yeah, just because you're not as big as Metallica isn't the end of the world there, Dave. You can stop bitching.
Well, the guy's entire life has been built around overcompensation. That's basically what it is. He overcompensates with his band, and he overcompensates with his lack of masculinity, which is why every single person has to be reminded about how deadly he is when engaged in the cycle of combat.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about the news that came out about At the Gates this weekend as well, but let's listen to another song first. Coroner released their first song in over 30 years, after 32 years since their last studio album, Grin, and over 15 years since they reformed. Swiss technical thrash metal legends Coroner have released their first song in more than 3 decades, called Renewal. It's the first single from their long-awaited new album, Dissonance Theory, which came out on October the 17th, 2025. Thoughts on Coroner before we listen to the track?
I'm big Coroner fan. They're one of my favorite. Actually, they're one of my favorite thrash bands. I think they're my top 5 when I did my top thrash albums, particularly R.I.P., the first album. I really like that one. And really the first 3 albums are really great. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Coroner. And I just watched the documentary that they put out, which is really quite good. It's on YouTube for free on their YouTube channel. And it kind of reminds me of the... that Celtic Frost documentary, like Dying God coming into human flesh one, where it's about kind of like when they kind of their reunion, you know what I mean? And then goes back into the past and, their history and, I don't know. I really like, I always felt like one of the reasons I liked Coroner above some of the other thrash bands is they're just like, when you look at like R.I.P. and their earlier albums, like they just have a more serious quality to them. You know what I mean? Where like, particularly compared to something like Anthrax or whatever, like there was this kind of darkness to like what they were doing. You know what I mean? That I think was very unique and interesting.
Yeah, you actually reminded me of them on that list. There were so many great thrash bands to go through for that thrash countdown that I did with the mics. I didn't spend a huge amount of time listening to Coroner, but partly because you had mentioned it on our group chat. When I saw that they're putting out a new album, I was quite excited about it. So the song is called Renewal. Let's give it a spin.
I love it. Absolutely
great.
love it. You know, considering that the vocalist is 60 years old, one, he sounds fucking fantastic, but you know, just overall, there's a hunger and a drive and a level of testosterone in this song that, you know, if we think about a band like Creator as an example, has long been missing from their music.
Oh yeah.
So as comebacks go, I would rate Coroner well above Dark Angel, and I put them probably neck on neck with Forbidden. But this is really, really good. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely way better than that Dark Angel comeback stuff. To me, like the only thing that I was nervous about going into this was their last album, Grin. It was okay, but you know, they kind of went out on a little bit of a, you know, the least good of all their albums. It was a little bit like groove mid-tempo type of thrash, you know what I mean? And I was a little nervous that they were going to keep doing that, but instead we got something that sounds very much in line with their kind of golden age in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? And has that dark aesthetic, the dark sound, and aggressive, you know, and they definitely are, you know, for a bunch of guys who are in their 60s, because I mean they were actually the Mark I version of Coroner was actually formed before Hellhammer, or Celtic Frost, yeah. So like they've been kind of the form they are now was after Celtic, I think around the time Celtic Frost was formed, like 80, 85, 86, like the trio lineup. But you know, these guys have been around a long time, and it's pretty. The one thing about them is that when you watch that documentary and see how like really intense they are, and how much they seem to really appreciate the fact that people actually, I think more people like them now than they did back in the 80s, you know what I mean, and early 90s. So I think I definitely feel like they've always had a lot of intention to what they're going to do. So I didn't think that, I figured if they're going to put out new music, it's going to be probably pretty good, you know.
What's the name of the documentary? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't remember. It's just called like it's called let me pull it up.
I'm having a gander at YouTube now. It's called Rewind.
That's it. Yep.
Came out in 2016, and as you say, free, and it's an hour and 46 minutes, so it's not insubstantial either.
No, it's quite good. It's very in depth, and they get into like the whole background, and they kind of go through the history at the same time as kind of going over like when they first kind of got back together, and I guess the beginnings of this album coming out, because they do show some of their stuff where they're working on songwriting and things as well. So I think they've been working on this album for almost for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love it. Thumbs up without a shadow of a doubt. Very much looking forward to the rest. As a matter of fact, I'm going to upgrade that thumbs up to a top notch.
Yeah, I second that.
All right. Time right now for the swirly of the week. So swirly of the week this week goes to, once again, a collection of idiots, but one stood out in particular amongst the fucking swill. He goes by the name Destroy Ball. And at first, I thought this has to be a joke, but then having looked into this bloke, I don't think this is a joke. I just think this is pure delusion. He comments on the Gaul episode that I put up last week. Gaul and Rob Halford walk into a bar. I don't know, because he can't spell don't know. I don't know what would happen, but I wouldn't want to find out. Thank Jesus I wised up and stopped listening to this nonsense. So then as the conversation transpires, because I don't really, in fairness, spend a huge amount of time talking to trolls on YouTube, I responded back, I think we're all pleased that you moved on. He then responded something to the effect of, because he's now gone and deleted some of the more embarrassing exchanges, but something to the effect of, I didn't stop listening to metal. I just mentioned, meant that I don't listen to this style of metal. Long story short, basically, it seems his issue is that he believes that, one, I'm going to hell, Gaul's going to hell, and Gaul in particular is going to hell because he's gay. So the guy is a Christian fucking lunatic who seems to have a problem with the homosexuals and with yours truly. I spoke to one. I don't know whether he thinks I'm one by extension. I don't know. The guy is just fucked in the head. But you know what I find absolutely disturbing is how does somebody in 2025, a grown man, take the time to write something that fucking stupid on the internet?
Oh, you see it all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it either. It's the great mystery of a lot of this stuff. How do people have time on their hands to worry about what T-shirt some band is wearing? You know, like in a band photo from 20 years ago, so you can cancel their show. You know, like it's just it's one of those mysteries. You know what I mean?
Well, mystery no more, because when I looked into Destroy Ball, his name is Trevor Markev, and he has a website called Devout Craziness. Now, again, I may or may not have spearheaded a trolling movement that mocked, that basically was like a blend of fundamentalist Christianity. Fred Phelps and Ric Flair had a kid, and he went out and started a Facebook page. It was fucking hysterical. I'll talk to you about it offline if you want to know more. But for various reasons, I need to keep those files permanently sealed. But I was taking the piss. This dude, I thought at first might be, but I don't think that he is. On August the 15th on Devout Craziness, he has a blog entry saying, J-Dog spotted lifting with Deerside frontman. And it's basically his attempt to try and be funny. There was something in particular that I thought was, here we go. This line I thought was truly telling. Needless to say, I'm ousted by society and popular culture as a hate monger and homophobic. Meanwhile, guys like Jay and Benton are celebrated and allowed to not only make a mockery of the church, but also sit by with idle threats and crusade against Christianity.
Okay.
I mean, this dude he genuinely does need to be placed into psychiatric care, into a fucking insane asylum. There's no question about it in my mind.
Yeah, this guy sounds like a fucking definitely a big old loser there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but again, I was he wasn't the only one. Sadly, I had one guy who posted on the Fortress forum something to the effect of, because I think in the copy that I wrote to describe the episode, I said I'd sit down with the legendary Gaul, and he writes there, to me he is not legendary, and then throws out the old F-bomb. And again, I thought to myself, Jesus, dude, firstly, you're about 45 years old, rocking the old skullet, so you shouldn't be pointing your fingers at anybody. But next, do you see, because he's in a band himself, I can't remember the name of the band, but I'm sure it's fucking nonsense. But can you imagine, like, I thought to myself, like, do you think that Gaul spends his time thrashing around sleeplessly, concerned about what people like you think about who he is? I mean, not to mention the fact we didn't talk about anything to do with his his romantic liaisons on the podcast. He doesn't ever talk about it. So why people suddenly now in this day and age decide they want to make a point out of it, I have no fucking idea. Episode 100 came and went without a single peep. But on this particular episode, like I said, the fucking morons slithered out of the woodwork.
I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird because... even after he came out, I saw I definitely saw a few things here and there, people making jokes about it, but in general, it seemed like pretty much like whatever, you know what I mean? Much the same way like when Rob Halford came out, it was kind of like, okay, whatever, but who knows? I mean, it does seem like I do think the general IQ there in Britain has gone on the decline. So
these are one of the mouth breathers was from the UK, although he had a name that suggested he might originally have been from Poland. This guy is from the US, but I think the issue is the general IQ of the human race is probably at an all-time low, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this yesterday. In my personal view, I think 90% of the human race is just a complete fucking waste of time, waste of space, waste of oxygen. So it stands to reason, sadly, that ratio is probably not going to be entirely lost on the metal scene.
No.
We're lucky in the sense that sometimes you forget that because we've built these communities where I think we managed to attract a lot of very cool people. I mean, I talk to folks that listen to this podcast all the time, and all of them are tier 1 top-notch people. But I think we sometimes forget, or you can be in the bubble a bit too much to realize that when you stick your head out, the average person out there, whether they're into metal or not, is a fucking idiot.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, the thing is, I think that the more, I guess, the other thing too is like, for example, with Sol Nox, I've gotten very little pushback about like a lot of different things because it's probably a pretty select crowd who's actually listening to episodes. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, like don't have anything that's like gone like super crazy, right? But with what you're doing here and being on YouTube. And as you grow and you get bigger and you get these type of things like having Gaul on like in person type of interview like that, like you're gonna start getting a wider range of idiots out there. You know what I mean?
Getting the whack jobs.
Yeah, and I do think that there's been a rise in kind of anti-gay or homophobic type of stuff as well. You know what I mean? I've been noticing that over the last few years. So it wouldn't be surprising for that to kind of come out in the metal scene as well. You know what I mean?
Probably, yeah. It's just so fucking idiotic. There's certain things around, I mean, there's actually, as we've spoken on the podcast before, there's an awful lot of things around, anything to do with wokery that I can't fucking stand. But who somebody chooses to marry or be with. I mean, with all the other problems in the world, are you really going to fucking waste your time thinking about that or getting uptight about that?
No, man. Like, I don't. In my opinion, it doesn't matter who you're fucking, as long as it's not a child or an animal, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
I really don't give a fuck.
Do whatever you want. I've said this before. Like, my view is do whatever you fucking feel like doing, unless you just don't break the law and don't make it my problem.
Yeah, and it really, Gaul's sexuality has nothing to do with, has no bearing on his artistic capabilities. Or anything else, really, no. It's not important to me. I don't really care about people's to be honest, unless you're a friend of mine, I don't really care about your personal life, period. You know what I mean? Unless you're somebody that I know personally and we have that kind of relationship, it doesn't matter to me,
Well, old Trevor, he gets him a double dunk swirly. What a fucking moron.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to some music again. Outlaw detail their upcoming studio album, although no song connected to this. It says here, black metal ensemble from Brazil, Outlaw, have revealed details in connection with their new album announcement, due out on October the 31st through AOP Records on various formats. It's going to be called Opus Mortis. Seems they got some reasonably decent guests on this. Yella from Dordrecht, Georgios from Dordrecht, and Lucas from Blasphemaniac. Do you know Outlaw at all?
Yeah, their last album was on either on my list or my honorable mentions the year that it came out, because it was quite good. It was quite nice. It's definitely kind of in the vein of something like Watain or something along those lines in a lot of ways. But I thought it was pretty good, their last album. So, we'll see how if this one holds up,
Yeah. The album that I do believe, by the way, is going to be your number one of 2025 unquestionably has to be the new Gaerea.
And it just so happens that there's a new single that's been released. Black Metal Masters Gaerea have just confirmed that they're now part of the Century Media Records roster. To celebrate the occasion, the band premieres a brand new standalone single titled Submerged. It was recorded, mixed, and mastered by Miguel Terrizzo. The album cover looks like when Anathema did A Fine Day to Exit. They actually did a very tasteful album cover. I thought I always liked that album cover.
Yeah.
But for some bizarre reason, even though it's quite different, Fine Day to Exit, the car's parked on the beach, and seemingly the person that was in the car has gone off to have the final swim in the ocean up ahead. It's just a AI submerged car in the ocean, but there's just something about it that reminds me of that album cover.
Except for A Fine Day to Exit is a depressing kind of alternative rock type of album. You know what I mean? Like Anathema were they weren't making black metal. This is an awful fucking cut for quote unquote black metal masters. What the fuck's up with this cover?
Well, friend, I think that you're about to find out just how depressing Gaerea can be. So let's give this a listen. I needed to let that one go on a little bit, just because I knew there were a few changes coming, a few step changes throughout the song that you needed to hear to get the full picture.
So, and dare I say, not even as good as Bring Me the Horizon. This is pretty bad. Like,
yeah.
Well, it's not surprising to me because, I was never really a fan of them. Like I know, like you and Mike, but that album was okay. The one that everybody seemed to like, but I had a kind of weird feeling even with that album that this was what was going to happen, because I could just kind of see the seeds of it, that they were never really a true black metal band, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like they always had the kind of seed of this kind of stuff there, and it's just grown and grown. You know what I mean?
You know what? So again, I
I will just reiterate. I was and will stay a fan of Unsettling Whispers and Limbo. I like Mirage a lot as well. Coma is where I checked out the album from last year. Like, it wasn't that I didn't like it. I was just completely indifferent to it. And that's basically how I feel about this as well. It's just a shame. They are true black metal masters, but of a specific subgenre, focus group black metal. This doesn't feel like music that comes from the gut and the soul or the heart anymore. It just sounds plastic, overproduced. Everything that was good about Unsettling Whispers, Limbo, and Mirage gone. It sounds like they've worked with a consultant or a group of people that have said to them, this is what's hip, this is what's selling amongst the kids right now, and they said, yeah, let's pile all of this into our music. Yeah. I've never been the sort of person that when a band changes their sound, I immediately go exit stage left. We've spoken about Paradise Lost, but let's take Gaerea's Countrymen in Moonspell. I was a fucking fan of Sin when it came out. I loved Butterfly Effects. I was on board for every single one of the sonic changes that band brought in, because it sounded at the time like that's genuinely what they wanted to do. And
it all sounded like Moonspell.
Yes.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, if they wanted to change sounds, it's whatever. But what bothers me about this is that I get the feeling that we're seeing the true colors of the band, if that makes sense, because I don't know. I think something that really put me off with Mirage was they're using these like occult symbols, but when I listen to interviews with them, they're like, there's nothing occult about what they're doing, but they're kind of using the symbols of like, you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like, it's almost like, it felt very like surface level, almost like they're trying to like fit in with a black metal scene. So I feel like this is maybe this is actually what they really want to do, but at the same time, it feels like, it feels very plastic, like you said. It feels very like, oh, Sleep Token's in, so we got to have, or Bring Me the Horizon's popular, so we got to have this section in the song. That's kind of what it felt like to me. It didn't really feel like that. I don't know. It does feel very plastic,
It sounds like people who grew up listening to Muse, not Emperor.
Exactly. And that's one thing, if that's what you want to make, right? If you're doing that from the start, but when you're being touted as quote unquote black metal masters and this, you know what I mean? Like, that's what really gets my goat, is when you're like, do whatever the fuck you want, but it's not black metal, This isn't, I feel like it's totally misleading and disingenuous to be calling them black metal masters and not even making black metal,
Well, that's PR spin at the end of the day. I mean, they refer to themselves now, because undoubtedly they manage their own Metal Archives entry, but they refer to themselves on there as post-black metal. I mean, I think the decline really started when Ruben Freitas, their previous vocalist, left. And I think when that happened, and that was sort of the final vestige of the band sounding like something approaching black metal. Because I agree with you, they were never traditional black metal, but I mean I really liked them. I thought that they had a very bright future ahead of them, and I thought that they could be a band that could take over the mantle from a band like Behemoth quite easily. Those early albums, as I said, stand by them. I think they're excellent. But the problem with a band doing something like they've done here, and I don't think that they necessarily realize it, and I may be proven wrong, as I was done with so bitterly with UFC 319. I feel like you run more of a risk of turning off your existing fan base, and in terms of net gain, fans versus old fans versus new fans, you're going to lose more fans than you're going to gain. Because I still don't see them as being a band that can cross over into the mainstream. Like, they're not going to become, they won't be the next Sleep Token or the next Bring Me the Horizon. So all that'll end up happening is their base they've built up over their first 3 albums. Those people will all go, this fucking sucks, I'm not listening to them anymore. And then they'll get some new people in, but I think Gaerea run the risk of kind of being one of those also ran bands that we've seen throughout every single genre where people change their sound. I mean, think about all the thrash bands that, when grunge came about, turned into grunge bands.
Yeah.
And people just kind of forgot about them. They had something about them when they started. People were like, yeah, these guys could be something special. And then they just faded off into the ether. And that's happened with every single trend in metal. Whether it doesn't really matter what subgenre you're talking about. I think it's going to happen here as well. The other thing is, it's far better to whether you're loved or hated, at least there's an emotional response. Indifference is never a good thing, and I feel just completely indifferent to this.
Yeah,
people could put it on, and I would hear it in the background, and I would, if someone were monitoring my brain activity, there would just be no change.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel like, and the thing for me is that I don't know. I'm definitely a very context listener. Like, if I'm in the mood to listen to something like a certain way, that's what I'm gonna listen to. But that's not that. There's never gonna be a time where I'm gonna want to put that album on. You know what I mean? That song does nothing for me. If I want to listen to a band that has like the kind of catchy, clean singing, heaviness, like that, they're not gonna be it. Because it's not. I think it's not really doing it. But like you said, another band that changed their sound that quite successfully, in my opinion, was Anathema. Like they went from a doom metal band to making I guess alternative rock in a way, but I think every era was also good for them, so it's like bands can do that and change their sound completely, but there also was a continuum, again, with Anathema, with Moonspell, with Paradise Lost. I think of all those bands, even they all sound like those bands, right? Like if you listen to Eternity, Alternative 4, and A Fine Day to Exit, it all fits, you know what I mean? And you can kind of hear the roots of that even in Serenades or something, so it's like, I don't know, this I can hear the roots of what they were doing before, but the thing, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of them to begin with, but I could kind of hear what people liked about, their earlier stuff like Mirage or something. It at least had this kind of intensity to it, you know what I mean? And I don't feel that. I don't feel that from this at all,
Totally agree. Now, I wanted to talk about At the Gates because there's some sad news about them. Actually, speaking of bands that changed their sounds, but I was very much on board with it. Their last album, The Nightmare of Being, I know landed wrong with a lot of people. I thought it was great. Anyway, there's news now that Tomas Lindberg from At the Gates has been diagnosed with cancer. He shared a statement on top of one that the band released, essentially saying, "Hello, everyone. I guess some of you may have been wondering why it's been so silent on the At the Gates front lately. In December 2023, I was diagnosed with adenoid cystic carcinoma, a cancer in the mouth and palate, and have since gone through a lot. It's been a very tough year. First, there was a major surgery where they took away part of the roof of the mouth. This was followed by radiation therapy for 2 months, and ever since, it's been a long, hard path towards recovery. In the beginning of 2025, they found some remains of the cancer, and it is inaccessible by surgery or radiation, so we will see what the next step is, but probably some form of chemotherapy to keep the cancer in check. Luckily, we recorded vocals for the demos for the new album before all this happened. The last version of the vocals, the ones that will end up on the album, were recorded in one day, mostly one takes, the day before the surgery, just to make sure we had the album, so to speak. So the vocals were actually recorded before the rest of the album. A bit different, but it felt good to have it done." Fucking absolutely shit news. Horrific news.
Yeah, it's one of those, he's a great vocalist and all the stuff from Grotesque to Sacrilege to At the Gates, all these things. And do you ever like think about how fucked up it is? Like life's like kind of like the way that life like does things like that, where it's like for example, when my mom got Alzheimer's, my mom was a journalist, right? Like she spent her whole life writing, doing, she's an editor for newspapers, writing, first thing that started going out for her was her ability to type. You know what I mean? Like, you got this guy who's a vocalist, he gets fucking mouth cancer. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's one of those things about life sometimes where you're just like, why the fuck is it like that? That's a very serious kind of question, but there is this kind of weird irony that happens where you're like, you're like, why? It's almost like this cruelty of life.
I was just about to say, it's not irony; it's just cold cruelty.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't matter what your plans were and what what else you had going on when this event happens, or you're stricken with this particular disease. That's it. That's where the road's going for you now. It's fucking horrible. It really is. Tomas Lindberg, I met years and years ago. When they were doing a show, I think in support, if I'm not mistaken, might have been Napalm Death, when he was with the Great Deceiver. I'll see if I can dig the photo up, but the Great Deceiver, killer band, fucking awesome live. And I've seen him live with everything barring at the gates, ironically enough. So I've seen, which again, I think, which is ironic, but, I've seen him live with, let's go down the list here. Dysphere, I've seen a couple of times. Absolutely brilliant.
The stuff with Dysphere is sick. Yeah.
Lockup, did I see him live with them? I don't think so, actually. But I love Lockup. I've spoken about that many times on the show. The Lurking Fear, don't think I've seen him live with that. So actually, not all the bands, but Dysphere and Great Deceiver, definitely. But very nice guy. I mean, he's been a long-serving fucking warrior in the metal scene.
Oh yeah, back to the late 80s, early 90s of Grotesque. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was, yeah.
A dude who has turned in really, if you think about it, a phenomenally consistent amount of great work. From At the Gates to Lockup to The Lurking Fear to Grotesque to The Great Deceiver. I mean, it's just, he's done an extraordinary amount of really, really good stuff.
Have you ever listened to the Sacrilege albums?
Yeah.
They're fucking sick. He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have. But yeah, so there's nothing else to say really other than, I'm sure he's not a listener of Into the Necrosphere, but if he were, or someone knows him, we're really pulling for him on this side. And we hope he gets through it. It's just such shit news, and this whole fucking year has been like this.
Yeah,
great people knocked down way too young.
It has been one of those years, and it's been definitely a death year. You remember how 2016 was a death year with starting off with David Bowie and then Prince, and I think Leonard Cohen died that year. Just a bunch of people. This year's kind of going the same way, right? I mean, it's been worse this year. I think there's been more people dying this year. Yeah. It's just or getting sick or just, I don't know. But but my hope is that hopefully he can pull through and hopefully he's able to do vocals again at some point,
Well, I was thinking it when I was reading that. Can you imagine the level of pain that he must have been in to have gone through that treatment and that surgery and then do vocals, in the style that he does vocals?
Yeah, because I think it said that he did them right before he went into the surgery, but still he must have had some, stuff that wasn't right. You know what I mean? But he still did it. And. That's a trooper, it's a warrior for life. You know what I mean?
1,000%. Anyway, all right, let's wrap it up. Our friends in Krigsgrav have got a new track out. I feel like there's a lot of hype for this forthcoming studio album that they're about to put out. It's coming out on September the 19th on Willowtip Records. It's called Stormcaller. Krigsgrav's band, I think we all like. Atmospheric black metalers stream a second single called Ghosts of Stormcaller. Let's give it a spin.
It's funny you mentioned sacrilege earlier because there's something that reminds me a bit of sacrilege on this song.
Once it gets into the actual, like, because that intro part was interesting because maybe it's just, it could be the way it's streaming, but it almost felt very, like, inspired by The Cure in a weird way.
Yes, I agree with you on that. There was like a bit of Paradise Lost, bit of The Cure. I know Justin is a big fan of Typo Negative, like maybe a little trace of that in there as well.
And it sounded pretty cool. And then, once it got into the actual, like, meat of the song, there definitely was that kind of sacrilege, like the good side of Gothenburg, Swedish death black metal. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that's actually good, not Dark Tranquility necessarily.
Not In Flames.
Yeah, but I like the good stuff. Yeah. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Great production. Justin sounds great.
The vocals are really good. Yeah,
everything. I think everything's hitting the mark. So, really looking forward to that album being released, and I'm also looking forward to the Black Flame Altar EP being released. I must correct myself. I said when I spoke about it last week, it was August the 29th, but it's actually September the 29th, correct?
No, it is August the 29th. I wrote that wrong on the.
Right. Okay. Well, so it's your fault then.
It is my
I accept
fault.
your apology.
I threw Drew Goth off as well, and then when I went, the Instagram was being annoying and won't let me like change it. So I'm just like, fuck it, I'll just leave it. I'm gonna make a post like with the correct date. But yes, August 29th. So it'll be from when this is out, it'll be the next Friday. So not this upcoming Friday, but the Friday after. I'm gonna drop it that day on. And I'd imagine, because there's no other band with the same name, it'll probably be Black Flame Altar, bandcamp.com. You know what I mean? So, because I looked up the band name and there is not another one on Metal Archive. So,
perfect. Well, that's nowadays you're. It's crazy. Like if you go on Metal Archives and you just hit A or B or whatever the case may be, the number of bands that have the same name is fucking wild.
Yeah, one of the names that was put forward there's like four. I was like, nah, like I don't like having a band name where there's other who have the same band name, because I also kind of feel like we're not in I guess like say in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you could kind of like get away with that, right? Like if you got like a band in, I don't know, Poland with one name and band in America and their name, they don't even know anything about each other, right? Until years later sometimes, right? But I think today there's really no excuse because we got Metal Archives and you can just type it in on Google and you know what I mean? Like there's ways to kind of like double check. So I feel like at this point you really need to make sure you're not like. And you can't just name yourself some basic ass thing anymore either in general, unless you find something real, I mean, that no one's used like Scour, for example, they have that. That's like a name that I guess hasn't been used yet really. So it's like, the other thing too, I guess the one place where that's a different is if you think of a band name, you look it up, and every other band with that name is broken up was like a demo band or at least one demo back in like 1990 or some shit. Like I think you're safe to take that name. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But well, brother, it has been a pleasure as always having you join me, and we'll do another one of these without a shadow of a doubt in hopefully not too long from now. This side of Christmas for sure. But thank you very, very much. Like I said, great to talk to you. Hope you guys enjoyed that as well.
And thank you again for playing the song last week. It was really pretty surreal to have it in front of the Gall interview, because Gall's stuff was actually kind of an influence on what I was doing in that album and on the EP anyways, because I was listening a lot to they put the Trelldom albums back on streaming, so I've been listening a lot to the first three Trelldom albums, the best ones, particularly Till Minne, the third one, which is the best. And those are definitely in my I don't know, Gall in general is a big inspiration, so it was pretty sick for me. So thank you again, brother.
Dude, we can do an entire episode on how much I love Till Minne. Like to me, that's just one of the best of the best.
Me too. To me, it's one of the best black metal albums of all time, and definitely one of the best Norwegian black metal albums. It's like really like black metal condensed to its
Yeah.
utmost. Maybe sometime we should do an episode about it on Sol Nox. That'd be cool.
Yeah, no, I'm always up for that. Thank you so much, my man. To all of you, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Universum. The new reality.